Hello there, welcome back to another show. Today I'm going to talk about The Thief of Bagdad. In the 1940 version, I've not watched as of yet the Dr. Feedback's Junior version, which I'm going to get to. I was actually going to do them as a one video, but I thought it'd be actually simpler to do two. So there we go. And so this one's got a troubled history, production history. Okay, so there's 5 directors, 3 credited. Michael Powell, Ludwig Berger, Tim Whelan, even Zorder himself, Alexander Zorder, or Zoltan Zorder did the direction, and William Cameron Menzies. So there was a lot of people involved. So it was Alexander Zorder was the one who was in charge, and he was the one, you know, focusing everything. Stars Sabu and Conrad Wright, as well as June Prez and John Justin, who are 2 names we don't really hear of. It was Rex Ingram as a genie. You know, so it's a cast where there's certain ones that pop out and other ones you never were seen again, really, or anything major. So Thief of Bagdad was a massive hit. It was one of those spectacular successes in, you know, the film industry that just delivered after a lot of stress involved in the production with 5 directors. This is one of those films where you can see there's some issues with the directing. Like there are more than one director, but it doesn't matter because the film still works. It's like everybody knew the job, so it was simpler. It was really simple to. If everyone was on the same page, it makes it a lot easier. The only person not on the same page was Ludwig Berger, who was initial director. So Corder hired him to start the Thief of Bagdad, and then as they started, he felt that this director was making it too small scale. He wanted an epic Thief of Bagdad. He did not want a small scale film. He wanted something that would deliver for international audiences. So he brought in Michael Powell to direct some of the sequences behind the back of Berger, which Berger was not very happy with, and eventually Berger got pushed out and Powell just kept on working. Then Tim Whelan was pulled in to direct some sequences to help Powell execute the actual vision of Alexander Corder for what he wanted for this film. At a certain point, the film was like expensive, but World War II broke out. So Michael Powell was drafted to go and do some films for the Ministry of Defence, and Corder was running out of money, so he moved production to America and moved all his actors and everything else over there. And then Cameron Menzies came in with Zoltan Zorder to finish the film off and get some shots of the American, rocky regions, for some scale. Which is weird because I was watching the film, I didn't know they'd actually shot in America, and I was like, that looks like America. Because it was. Yeah. So it's a film with lots of authors, but the main one being Alexander Corder, because he was the one who was bringing it all together. Now it had its stars. Conrad Wright was a well-known actor for 20 years, starting in Germany. Then he came over to do English language films, and he was a well-known actor, respected actor, and he was a villain, and he could always deliver on a good villain. If you gave him some more complicated stuff to do, he would deliver that as well. But if you just want a full-on villain, he could do it. And pretty much any Arabian Night film since this film, the villain's been doing Conrad Wright. That's what they do. They're doing Conrad Wright. That's it. And I'm sure most of them would admit it. Because he's so good, it's like, oh yeah, that's how you do it. You've got Sabu as the thief who gets entangled with the prince, who has been conned by Conrad Wright's character to basically go among the people to find out what they want, and then during that time, Veidt turns on him and basically, sets him up to be killed, so that Veidt can take over the kingdom. Like a villain does. So the prince has to learn what the people are really like, has to gain back his kingdom, as well as fall in love with the princess, and finding ways to beat Veidt. There's also a genie played by Rex Ingram who turns up later on in the film when he interacts with Sabu a lot. So essentially, you've got the Arabian Nights stories for this Thief of Bagdad, and it is an episodic film. It does come back and forth in time. So you start off with the prince being a blind man, being a beggar with his trusty dog, and then he tells people his story, and you find out the dog is actually Sabu been turned into a dog, and he was originally the prince. Then at some point you catch up with that. He's cured of his blindness, Sabu gets turned back into Sabu, and the adventure continues. But it is a kind of story where you get a feeling as they were making stuff up as they went. They probably had a template, but they were still rewriting things as they were going. They were still working out what the film was. So the film does have an episodic feel. Now, a lot of films from this period have for a modern audience a weird pacing thing, where essentially in the silent era they got it pretty much down for how do you communicate carefully and clearly using this new medium, because there's no sound, and they found a way to actually make the films go at a certain pace. Now the problem is a lot of filmmaking came from theatre, the theatre actors, the theatre directors, as well as new directors going into for film, and a lot of it was based on what worked in theatre, which doesn't always work in film, because film is shown in theatres, so they assumed it would be the same thing. It's like, no, it's not. So when the talkies come in, the filmmaking became a lot more theatrical for a good decade. In good ways and bad, because it allowed people like Emma Lubitsch and Howard Hawks and people who are really good with words and with actors to really do their stuff. But it also meant that that was always very dependent on who you had on the in the director's seat, who you had as actors. Because a director who didn't have much control of the medium could just make films that could drone on for ages. And then rely on the producer to come in and say, no, we cut this, just to keep this damn thing down to a decent running time. There was that thing of you could watch the film and see scene for scene some films were made by people who didn't really have full control and were relying on the actors and the cameraman, and there's a lot of 30s and 40s films that kind of just float there. And the kind of tradition of that actually went into the 50s before it kind of died. You went to widescreen with the biblical epics, they went back to that style of filmmaking. And then it kind of died fully in the 60s, and it was like, no, this is film's its own thing. And you can take things from theatre, but you have to adapt them rather than just do it laboriously like that. And why I'm saying this is, you can sense scene for scene. Sometimes you've got Michael Powell, and other times you don't. And some scenes are really well done, and other scenes are convention of the day where you get feeling the cameraman was in charge a lot of the time, or Corder was in charge and they're doing his thing, and ultimately it doesn't matter. It just means that sometimes there's a pacing issue where you might have a director who's thinking visually all the time, and you can get a run of scenes that are more dialogue based and could be paced up a little bit by thinking more visually. But ultimately it doesn't matter, because the characters are charming, the stories are interesting, and it delivers. It's a full-on version of this fantastical world that has nothing to do with the reality of the Arabian Nights stories. There's something else for that audience who understand those stories, like where they came from the culture. This is like a foreigner's version of that, and the film pretty much owns up to that. It's the film that pretty much following on from the original, it would lead to like the Ray Harryhausen films, where the view of the Middle East is shaky when it comes to reality. Which is, again, what I was explaining earlier on, was why you get in the Harryhausen films depends on the director, like how good the dialogue scenes are. Because they were not the priority in those films, and sometimes you get lucky and sometimes you didn't with the choice of director. So, basically the film does have its moments, but also has some clunky bits. And it does have that sense of sometimes you're in the good 1940s and sometimes you're in the kind of faint 40s that's maybe not so good. But they work around it. Like Corda, they had a producer who was totally in control of the film, so he knew what he wanted. So, and essentially he threw out Berger because Berger wasn't given what he wanted, which was a smaller scale film, and he wanted a sense of epicness. And the film goes at a nice clip because it knows it's an episodic film, and there's scenes where the prince disappears from part of the narrative. There's scenes where Sabu disappears from part of the narrative. There's no one character that takes you through all the narrative, apart from the villain, I suppose. There's sometimes the princess disappears from the narrative for a bit. There's all sorts of things that, with a conventional director, could make a very, very boring film. But because this film is clearly worked out what it needs to be, it can be magical. Because it's moving around in time and doing flashbacks and coming back and tying back into this main story. It's something that you need a director who knows what they're doing and know what the shots lead to what shots to actually make that work. You can't just give it to a director who doesn't have full control of craft. It's something that separates the boys from the men a lot of the time. And this film does it well because it does have one of the best directors ever in charge of some of it. And it's just the atmosphere, the colours are beautiful. The cast know exactly what they're doing. They know exactly what they are the plan for what they have to perform. And John Justin was actually more of a theatre actor than a film actor. He pretty much viewed his theatre career as more important than his film career. Like, probably better parts, more Ranger parts, rather than just being the leading man and trying to look handsome, like he probably would in most films. And that's when he's actually good, because he's actually got like some stuff to do. He's playing a guy who's changing over time, who's got an arrogance he needs to lose. He's blind and he has to learn humility. He knows there's something wrong with the world, it's his world, but he doesn't know how to sort it. So he has a nice arc. The princess is done nicely, performed nicely as well. I mean, both these actors, you realise watching them that they're not the stars, but they do their job well. Sabu's the star. Sabu's in some ways not as good as an actor as anyone else in the film. He's a personality, but it works for this film. They understand exactly where he's placed. So when he's carrying the film, it worked because he's a personality that transcends his limitations as an actor, is the best way to put it. The sequence where he has to go to the temple to find an object that he needs to get further with the genie to follow the story is terrific. There's lots of sequences that are just wonderfully done throughout the film, but that's one of the highlights. He works perfectly. Conrad Veidt works beautifully as a villain. He kind of steals the film, really. I'm sure even the actors on the set probably knew that. It was like, okay, it was his film. It's like, we're here, but it's his film. Rex Ingram as a genie is a lot of fun. He's really enjoying himself. He's not scared of going over the top and being ridiculous. He's really enjoying himself for what he can do. I think a lot of his stuff was actually the stuff shot in America. So that's stuff that does seem to be much more American based in its locations. Well, the early stuff seems to be much more European style. But the change of location actually means it's like the scenes set in the centre of the world, the political world of the machinations of like all these palaces and all the different things that Conrad Veidt's doing has a style. And when you go way outside that to where Sabu does his adventure. It's a very different style, but it actually works for the film because it feels like it's a different part of the world. So you actually do get that thing where in a lot of films, even though they say we've transported ourselves to the other side of the world, it still feels like the same set as the one before and the same design as the one before. And this one, it feels a bit different, and that actually makes it work. But I still prefer. There's some scenes in the palaces, like where Conrad Veidt has a kind of creature that comes alive to kill the king, and there's a horse that flies and things like that. That's pure Michael Powell stuff. That's the stuff he eats up. There's a sequence in the magical garden that's very... I know Michael Powell shot that, and it's very Michael Powell. There's lots of stuff that's Michael Powell. And they really kind of engage the film in the midpoint where you need... or the early midpoint where you need some magic in the film and you deliver. I mean, you can see the joins in some of the special effects, which doesn't matter though because they still work beautifully. And there is just this sense of this film was, despite all, maybe because of all its different influences, it's just working. There's just something about it that just works, and it's just perfect. And its flaws make it even better. The fact that there's so many directors and so many changes locations, and this film was like one of those nightmare shoots that turned out perfect. Well, there's other films that look like the same option and they're basically unmemorable. This one was like a disaster after disaster, but people still remember it. It's that kind of film, and it just is wonderful. And I'd say go watch. I'm trying to give you basic things without telling you, like, ruin the magic for when you see it. It's like, yeah, there's this and there's that, but I'm not going to explain what they do in the plot and things. It's like, you have to go and find that, watch the film for yourself. The weird thing about spoilers, at a certain point, a film's so old, and for a lot of people it's out of circulation, that, they won't have seen it unless they saw it as a kid. So it's like, well, I'm trying not to blow, like, some of the surprises of the film that you may not know of. So I would say go watch the film. It is beautiful. It's a lovely film. It's highly recommended to go see it. It's just perfect. And seeing it as the biggest screen as possible is my recommendation, because it really is epic in the 40s way, where the production design is gorgeous and you want to see it in the biggest screen as possible. So I hope you enjoyed this video. That's me for now. I'll see you later.